First time she said she was spending the weekend at her friend's place, I didn't question it. The second time, I joked about how her friend must have better snacks than I did. By the third time, it stopped feeling like a harmless routine and started feeling like a pattern I wasn't allowed to examine. It wasn't just that she went every weekend, it was the way she went. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and hit like if you want more real stories like this. She would start acting distant on Thursday, like she was already halfway gone. On Friday, she'd wear perfume even though she was supposedly just hanging out with her friend in sweatpants. She'd hug me at the door like she was doing me a favor, like I was a polite obligation she needed to check off before she could get to her real life. And I let it slide because that's what you do when you love someone and you're trying to be mature about things you don't fully understand. Her name was Tessa. We'd been together for a little over 2 years. We lived together for a little more than one. A nice apartment, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I paid a bigger portion of the rent because I made more, and that was never a problem for me. I wasn't keeping score. I wasn't trying to win anything. I just wanted peace. I wanted partnership. I wanted the kind of relationship where you could say the word weekend and it didn't immediately mean distance. Tessa had always been social, always had friends, always had plans. That was part of what I liked about her in the beginning. She made the world feel open. She made the week feel less heavy. But the weekends at her friend's place started after something else happened. After I met her ex. His name was Dylan. The first time she mentioned him, it was like she was talking about a past job she'd quit. Something that existed before me but didn't matter now. She said they were together in college. She said it didn't work out. She said they were better as friends, and she said it like she expected me to clap for her maturity. When I finally met him, it was at a random bar downtown, one of those places with soft lighting and expensive cocktails and fake plants hanging from the ceiling. Tessa said her group was meeting up for someone's birthday. She asked if I wanted to come. I did. Not because I was suspicious, not yet. Mostly because I thought it would be good for us. I'd been working a lot. I wanted a night where we didn't feel like roommates passing in a hallway. I wanted to see her in her element, laughing, social, bright. I remember walking into that bar and seeing him before she even introduced us. He was sitting close to her friends like he belonged there, like he'd been part of the group for a long time. He had that comfortable confidence guys get when they think they're still relevant in a woman's life, even when they're supposed to be history. When Tessa finally took my hand and pulled me over, she smiled like she was proud of herself. "This is my boyfriend, Mark." I nodded, offered my hand. Dylan grinned, shook it, and held it a second longer than necessary. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to send a message. "So you're the guy." That's what his eyes said, even if his mouth didn't. We spent the night there. Drinks, jokes, stories that had nothing to do with me. Every time I tried to join the conversation, it felt like I was stepping into a room that was already full. Tessa didn't do anything openly wrong that night. She didn't flirt in a way you could point at. She didn't touch him. She didn't disappear with him. But she did something else. She forgot I existed when he was talking. She laughed a little too hard. She leaned in a little too close. Her face lit up in a way I hadn't seen in months. And when I drove us home, she was in a perfect mood, humming to herself, scrolling her phone, replying to messages like her fingers couldn't move fast enough. That was the first time I felt it. That quiet little drop in my stomach. The first weekend she stayed at her friend's place was 2 weeks after that. She said her friend Bianca was having a rough time. Breakup, stress, whatever. She said she wanted to be there for her. She said it was a girls' weekend, movies, wine, comfort food. I kissed her forehead and said, "Okay." That weekend felt long. Not because I needed to control her, not because I didn't trust her. It just felt long because I was alone in our apartment, and it was the first time in our relationship that she'd chosen to be away from me for 2 nights in a row without a clear reason. When she came back on Sunday afternoon, she was cheerful but tired. She hugged me quickly, like she was hugging a family member she'd already seen this week. I asked how Bianca was. Tessa said she was better. That was it. No funny stories, no details, no mention of what they did. And that's when I started noticing something else. Whenever she lied, she stayed vague. Not because she was bad at lying, but because she was good at it. She kept things short so she didn't have to remember too much later. The second weekend, she left even earlier. Friday afternoon. She said Bianca had asked her to come help set up for a small get-together. I nodded again. The third weekend, she didn't even try to make it sound like it was about Bianca. She just said she needed a break, needed girl time, needed to reset. I nodded again. What I didn't do was argue. I didn't accuse her. I didn't search her phone. I didn't become a detective in my own home. I watched. I listened. I learned the difference between someone being busy and someone being unavailable. On those weekends, her replies were short, delayed, casual, like she was responding out of politeness instead of affection. I miss you, hope you're having fun. She'd send back a thumbs up emoji. Or a quick love you too. No extra words, no warmth. And when she came home, there was always a subtle tension, like she needed time to remember how to be my girlfriend again. After about 2 months of this, I finally said something. Not dramatic, not accusing, just honest. Hey, I feel like we barely have weekends together anymore. Tessa was standing at the kitchen counter pouring water into the coffee machine. Her body stiffened in the smallest way. A tiny pause that would have meant nothing if I hadn't been paying attention. She turned and smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I know. It's just been a lot lately. A lot with Bianca? She sighed, like I was being exhausting. Yes, Mark, with Bianca, she's struggling. I nodded. Okay. I just miss you, that's all. She stepped toward me and kissed my cheek. Quick, light, like a stamp of approval. You're sweet. It's only for a little while. That's what people always say when they're trying to buy time. Only for a little while. The next weekend, she was gone again. And that weekend was the one that changed everything. Because that weekend, I saw her. Not at her friend's place. Not at a girls' night. I saw her with him. It happened in the most ordinary way. I wasn't stalking her. I wasn't following her. I wasn't waiting in a parking lot like some paranoid guy who'd lost control of his life. I was doing something normal. I was buying groceries. Saturday afternoon, around 2. I'd realized we were out of coffee, and even though she wasn't home, I still had the habit of planning around our life together. I grabbed my keys, went to the store, walked through the aisles with a cart I didn't need. I remember I was standing in front of the cereal section, debating whether I should get the one she liked or the one I liked when my phone buzzed. It was a text from her. At Bianca's. We're watching movies, probably staying in tonight. Miss you. I stared at the screen for a second. Then I typed back. Miss you too. Have fun. And I put the phone away. 5 minutes later, I walked past the windows at the front of the store. That's when I saw her. Not inside. Outside. In the parking lot. She was getting out of a car I recognized immediately. A dark gray sedan. Dylan's car. I knew it because I'd seen it at the bar, and because I'd seen it in the background of one of her Instagram stories once, parked behind her friend group like it was just another detail that didn't need explaining. She stepped out of the passenger seat like it was natural, like she'd done it 100 times. Dylan came around the car and handed her a small bag. Food, maybe, or something else. I couldn't see. Tessa laughed at something he said. Then she touched his arm. Not a friendly tap, not a polite gesture. Her fingers lingered, and Dylan leaned in close like he was about to kiss her. He didn't. Not right then, but he didn't have to, because the message was already clear. She wasn't at Bianca's. She wasn't doing girl time. She wasn't resetting. She was doing something else. Something she didn't think I deserved to know about. I froze. Not in a dramatic way. Not with my heart pounding and my vision blurring. I froze like my body had just accepted a truth my mind had been trying to avoid. I watched them walk toward the entrance, side by side. Comfortable, familiar. like a couple that didn't need to talk much because they already understood each other. And I did the only thing that made sense. I turned and walked away. I didn't confront her. I didn't call her. I didn't run outside like a scene from a movie. I pushed my cart into an empty aisle and just stood there, staring at a shelf of canned soup that suddenly looked more interesting than the entire life I'd built. My hands were shaking a little, not from anger, from clarity. Because there are moments where your brain stops negotiating. It stops making excuses. It stops hoping. It simply says, "This is what it is." I left the store without buying anything. I sat in my car for a while, staring straight ahead like I was trying to reboot myself. And then, slowly, I drove home. The apartment was quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful and now felt like a warning. I walked inside, set my keys down, and looked around. Everything in that place was half mine and half hers. The couch we picked together. The rug she loved. The framed pictures we hung when we first moved in, smiling like we'd made it. I went to the bedroom and opened her closet. Half of it was her. Half of it was empty space that I'd always assumed would fill up as our life grew. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her side. Her pillows were still neat. She always liked them a certain way. I used to fix them when she left, like it was some weird little love language. And then I realized something. I didn't want to fix anything anymore. I didn't want to be the guy who kept adjusting himself to fit into someone else's dishonesty. So I made a decision. Not impulsive, not emotional, clean. I grabbed a duffel bag and started packing her essentials. Not in a cruel way. Not in a chaotic throwing clothes into trash bags way. In a calm, methodical way. Like I was handling a situation that had already been decided. Because it had. I folded her sweaters, rolled her jeans, packed her toiletries, put her makeup bag in carefully so nothing broke. I packed the life she'd been living in my apartment while she was building another one somewhere else. As I worked, my phone buzzed again. Tessa, we might go out for dessert later. Bianca wants ice cream. I stared at the message. Then I put my phone down and kept packing. By the time the sun started setting, her things were stacked in neat piles by the door. Not everything, but enough to make a statement. Enough to make it real. I sat on the couch and waited. Not for her to come home. For myself to stop expecting her to. Around 9:40 p.m., the front door opened. I didn't move. I didn't jump up. I didn't greet her. I didn't pretend I hadn't been alone all day building my own quiet exit plan. Tessa walked in wearing a coat that wasn't hers. It was too big on her. Men's coat. Dark, heavy, expensive. She stopped when she saw me sitting there. Her eyes flicked to the bags, then back to me. Her face shifted into surprise, then confusion, then something sharper. What is this? I looked at her calmly. Your things. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something quick, something dismissive, something that would put me back into the role of the guy who nods and waits. But she hesitated, because the coat on her shoulders was evidence she couldn't argue with. She set her purse down slowly. Why are you doing this? I leaned back against the couch cushion. Because I saw you today. Her face went still. Saw me? At the grocery store. Her breathing changed. Not dramatic, just slightly faster. Like her body knew it had been caught, even if her mind wasn't ready to admit it. I was with Bianca, she said quickly. I nodded. You weren't. She stared at me, and for a second I saw it. The calculation. The choice between continuing the lie or changing tactics. She swallowed. Okay, I wasn't with Bianca. There it was. The truth, slipped out like she was tired of holding it. I didn't react. I didn't smile. I didn't look satisfied. I just waited. She took a step closer. Mark, it's not what you think. I let out a slow breath. I didn't even know what to think yet. But I know what I saw. She rubbed her forehead like she was stressed, like I was the problem she had to solve. I ran into Dylan. That's all. We grabbed food. We talked. I nodded again. You ran into him every weekend? Her eyes flashed with irritation. No, then why are you wearing his coat? She looked down at herself and then back at me, and something flickered in her expression. Fine. I stayed at his place for a bit. It was cold. He offered it. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal. The words landed like a slap, not because they were cruel, but because they were lazy. It's not a big deal, as if my reality didn't deserve better writing than that. I stood up slowly. Okay. She blinked. Okay? Yeah, okay. You can take your things and go. Her eyebrows pulled together. Go where? I shrugged. Dylan's place, Bianca's place, a hotel, doesn't matter. She took another step toward me, voice rising. Mark, you're seriously kicking me out because I got ice cream with my ex? I didn't raise my voice. No, I'm ending this because you lied to my face for months and made me feel like I was crazy for noticing. Her lips pressed tight, and suddenly she looked angry instead of guilty. You're overreacting. You always do this. You get insecure and dramatic, and then you make it my problem. I stared at her. That was the moment I realized she'd rehearsed this. She'd prepared to blame me the second the truth came close enough to touch. I nodded. If that's what you believe, you should be relieved. You don't have to deal with me anymore. She looked stunned for a second, like she wasn't used to me agreeing with her accusations. Mark, come on, don't do this. I walked to the door, opened it, and held it. Her eyes went to the bags again. She didn't move. She stood there like she expected me to fold, like she expected me to start negotiating my own boundary. I didn't. I waited. She took a shaky breath. You're really doing this? Yes. Her voice cracked. After everything? I nodded again. After everything. She stepped closer, lowering her voice like a last attempt at control. We didn't sleep together. I looked at her, and for the first time that night, my expression changed. Not anger, disappointment. That's the defense you chose? She stared at me. I shook my head slowly. I don't care if you slept with him or not. I care that you were willing to live a second life and let me sit at home like I was just your convenient option. Her eyes filled with tears, and I knew those tears weren't for me. They were for the consequences. She walked toward the door, dragging one of the bags. She didn't apologize. She didn't admit anything fully. She just kept looking back like she expected me to chase her. I didn't. When the door closed behind her, I locked it. Then I stood in the quiet apartment and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. The next morning, my phone was full of messages. Some were angry, some were sad, some were desperate. You're making a mistake. You're throwing this away. Dylan is just a friend. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk? I didn't reply, because I finally understood something that should have been obvious the whole time. If someone respects you, you don't have to beg for honesty. If someone loves you, they don't build a second world that excludes you. I spent that Sunday doing something I hadn't done in months. I made my own plans. I cleaned the apartment. Not as a ritual for her. Not as a way to prepare for her return. For me. I rearranged the living room. Moved the chair she always insisted had to be in a certain spot. Took down a framed photo of us at the beach and set it in a drawer. Not because I hated it, because I didn't need it staring at me like a question. That week at work, I felt lighter. People noticed. My coworker asked if I'd gotten a haircut or if I'd started sleeping more. I just smiled. By Wednesday, Tessa showed up again. Not with Dylan's coat this time. She knocked like she had the right. When I opened the door, she looked tired. Makeup minimal. Hair messy. Like she wanted to look like the girl I'd first met, not the version of herself that had been playing games. We need to talk, she said. I shook my head. No, we don't. Her eyes widened. Mark, please. This is insane. You can't just throw away 2 years because I made one mistake. I leaned against the doorframe. It wasn't one mistake. It was a lifestyle. She flinched. I didn't cheat on you. I nodded. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you did. Either way, you lied. Every weekend. Her voice softened again. I was confused. Dylan and I have history. I wanted closure. I stared at her for a long moment. Closure doesn't require hiding. She swallowed. I didn't want to hurt you. I let out a quiet laugh, not mocking, just honest. You didn't want to lose me. There's a difference. Tessa's eyes watered again. Can we fix it? I thought about it. Not because I wanted to, because I wanted to be sure. Then I answered in the calmest voice I'd ever used with her. Number. Her mouth trembled. Why not? Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life wondering what you're doing every time you say you're going somewhere. Because I don't want to be with someone who needs 2 lives to feel whole. Because I don't want to compete with a man you claim you're over. And because when I finally stood up for myself, you didn't apologize. You blamed me. She looked like she'd been punched. Mark. I shook my head again. Take care of yourself, Tessa. I closed the door gently. Then I locked it. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt quiet. That kind of quiet you get when you stop living on someone else's terms. A month later, I saw her again by accident. Not at a grocery store this time. At a coffee shop downtown. She was sitting at a table with Dylan. She laughed at something he said, leaning in close, fingers touching his wrist. The exact same gesture. The exact same comfort. And I realized something that made me smile. It had never been about Bianca. It had never been about needing space. It had been about keeping her options open, keeping one foot in the past while using me as her present. She looked up and saw me. Her smile faded instantly, like she'd been caught again. Dylan turned and glanced at me, expression smug for a fraction of a second. I didn't stop. I didn't stare. I didn't give them anything. I walked past the window without breaking my pace, holding my coffee like my life wasn't a fragile thing anymore. Because it wasn't. I wasn't the guy waiting at home for someone who kept choosing another door. I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the safe place to return to when her excitement ran out. I was the person who finally understood that self-respect isn't loud. It's quiet. It's walking away without begging. It's choosing peace over proof. It's realizing that love doesn't require you to compete. And if someone keeps leaving every weekend, eventually you have to stop calling it a habit and start calling it what it really is. A choice. So I made my own. And I never looked back.